Hi guys, it's Alaysia here again today and welcome back to my channel. My camera is half dead. Today we're talking about the Caylee Marie Anthony case. Many of you probably already know about this, but there has been apparently some recent stuff that's been said about it. I'm not sure. But I don't think it was done when I did my research, so if it's not in here, then I can go back and add it in. Anyway, if you want a tutorial on my makeup look, it's already up on my channel. It's Capricorn inspired, and I will put that in the link below. Anyway, let's get started talking about this case. So, Caylee Marie Anthony was born on August 9th, 2005. She lived in Orlando, Florida with her mother, Casey Anthony, and her maternal grandparents, George and Cindy Anthony. According to Casey Anthony's father, George, Casey had left the family's home on June 16, 2008, along with her daughter, Caylee, who was almost 3 years old at the time, and she did not return for 31 days. Casey's mother, Cindy, asked repeatedly during this month to see Caylee, but Casey claimed that she was too busy with work assignments in Tampa, Florida. At other times, she had said that Caylee was with a nanny who she identified as Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez. I probably butchered that. I really hope I didn't. So this lady did exist, but she had never met Caylee or any other member of the Anthony family, nor had she ever met any of Casey's friends. Cindy said that Casey had given various excuses for Caylee's whereabouts before finally admitting that she had not seen Caylee for weeks. On July 13, 2008, while doing yard work, Cindy and George found a notice from the post office for a certified letter on their front door. George had picked up the letter from the post office 2 days later on the 15th and found that Casey's car was in a tow yard. So George went to pick up the car, and when he did, both he and the tow yard attendant noticed that there was a strong smell coming from the trunk of a car. Later, they had both stated that they believed the odor to be that of a decomposing body, which I, for one, do not know what a decomposing body smells like, but I'm sure if you smell it, you will know exactly what it is. And then when they opened the trunk, it had contained a bag of trash, but no human body. So on July 15th, 2008, Caylee was reported missing in a 911 call made by Cindy, who said she had not seen Caylee for 31 days and that Casey's car smelled like it had a dead body in it. So Detective Yuri Melik from the Orange County Sheriff's Department began investigating Caylee's disappearance. When questioned, Casey lied to detectives, telling them that Caylee had been kidnapped by a nanny on June 9th. She was then charged with first-degree murder in October 2008 and pleaded guilty. Casey had also lied and told them that she was working at Universal Studios, and this is a lie that she had apparently been telling her parents for years. Investigators brought Casey to Universal Studios on July 16, 2008, the day after Caylee was reported missing, and they asked her to show them her office. Caylee led police around for a while before admitting that she had been fired from the job years ago, so she was lying to her parents about working at Universal Studios for years. Casey was first arrested on July 16, 2008, that same day, and was charged the following day with giving false statements to law enforcement, child neglect, and obstruction of criminal investigation. The judge denied bail, saying Casey had shown willful disregard for the welfare of her child. On July 22nd, after a bondage hearing, the judge set bail to $500,000. So on July 29, 2008, Casey was offered a limited immunity deal by prosecutors related to the false statements given to law enforcement about locating her child, which was renewed on August 25th and was to expire August 28th, but she did not take this offer. On August 22nd, 2008, after 1 month of incarceration, she was released from the Orange County Jail after her $500 bail was posted by the nephew of California bail bondsman Leonard Padilla, or Leonard Padilla, in hopes that she would cooperate and that Caylee would be found. On September 5th, 2008, Caylee was released again in bail after being fitted with an electronic tracking device. Her $500 bond was posted by her parents, Cindy and George Anthony. They had signed a promissory note for the bond. On October 14th, 2008, Caylee was indicted by a grand jury on charges of first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, aggravated manslaughter of a child, and 4 counts of providing false information to the police. She was later arrested, and Judge John Jordan ordered that she be held without bond. On October 21st, 2008, the charges of child neglect were dropped against Caylee. On October 28th, 2008, she was arraigned and pleaded not guilty to all charges. On April 13th, 2009, prosecutors announced that they planned to seek the death penalty for Caylee, and then on December 11th, 2008, 2-year-old Caylee's skeletal remains were found with a blanket inside a trash bag in a wooded area near the Anthony family's house. Now we are going to talk about the actual trial. So 400 pieces of evidence were presented at the trial. A strand of hair was found in the trunk of Caylee's car, and it was microscopically similar to the hair found in Caylee's hairbrush. The strand showed what is called root banding. This is where hair roots form a dark band after death of the strand of hair, and this is consistent with that of a dead body. Friday, October 24th, 2008, a forensic report from the Oak Ridge National Laboratory judged that results from an air sampling procedure known as LIBS performed in the trunk of Caylee's car showed chemical compounds consistent with a decompositional event, based on the presence of 5 key chemical compounds that Voss's research, that's the guy who had presented the forensic report, that his research group considers typical of decomposition. Investigators stated that the trunk smelled strongly of human decomposition, but human decomposition was not specified on the laboratory scale. The group also stated that there was chloroform in the trunk of the car. So in October of 2009, officials released 700 pages of documents related to the Anthony investigation, including records of Google searches of the terms neck breaking and how to make chloroform on a computer accessible to Caylee, presented by prosecutors as evidence of a crime. So according to detectives, crime scene evidence included residue of a heart-shaped sticker found on the skull of Caylee, like on the mouth of her skull, but the laboratory was not able to capture the heart shape photographically after the duct tape was subjected to dye testing. So the medical examiner said that the duct tape was one of the reasons that she had ruled the death a homicide, but they officially listed it as death by undetermined means. So there was a blanket that was found at the crime scene, and it matched Caylee's bedding at her grandparents' home, which I will mention. So the grandparents and Caylee and Caylee all lived together, if you didn't catch that. So witness John Dennis Bradley has software developed for computer investigations, and this was used by the prosecution to indicate that Caylee had conducted extensive computer searches of the word chloroform 84 times, and to suggest that Anthony had planned to commit murder. So the trial had began on May 24th, 2011 at the Orange County Courthouse, and it lasted 6 weeks. The prosecution had sought the death penalty for Caylee Anthony and said that she wished to free herself from parental responsibilities and murdered her daughter by administering chloroform and applying duct tape. Defense team led by Jose Baez countered the argument by saying that Caylee had drowned accidentally in the family's swimming pool on June 16, 2008, and that George Anthony disposed of the body, told Caylee she would spend the rest of her life in jail for child neglect, and that is why she didn't report the incident for 31 days. So Baez alleged that it was habit for Caylee to hide her pain and pretend nothing was wrong, because supposedly she had been sexually abused by George Anthony since she was 8 years old, and her brother Lee had also made advances towards her. Baez also questioned whether Roy Kronk, the meter reader who found the bones, had actually removed them from another location, and further alleged that the police department's investigation was compromised by their desire to feed a media frenzy about a child's murder rather than a mundane drowning. He admitted that Casey had lied about there being a nanny named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez. Prosecutors had called George Anthony as their first witness to the stand. This is where he denied ever sexually abusing his daughter, and he said that he did not smell anything resembling decomposition of a body when Casey had visited him on June 24th, but he did smell something when he picked up the car on July 15th. Cindy Anthony testified that her comment to 911 that Casey's car smelled like someone died was just a figure of speech. Why you would say something that's figure of speech to a police officer in a 911 call doesn't make sense to me, but that's what she said. Prosecution then called John Dennis Bradley, a former Canadian law enforcement officer who developed the software for computer investigations, to analyze a data file from a desktop taken from the Anthony home. Bradley said he was able to use a program to recover deleted searches from March 17th and March 21st, 2008, and that someone had searched the website SciSpot.com for chloroform 84 times. Bradley expressed his belief that some of these items might have been bookmarked. Under cross-examination by the defense, Bradley agreed there were 2 identical accounts on the desktop, and there was no way to know who actually performed the searches on this computer. So K9 handler Jason Forgy testified that Gurus, I'm not sure how the name is pronounced, who was a German Shepherd cadaver dog certified in 2005, indicated a high alert of human decomposition in the trunk of Casey's car, saying that the police dog had had real-world searches numbering over 3,000 by now. So during a cross-examination, Baez argued that the dog's search records were just hearsay. Sergeant Kristen Brewer also testified that her canine partner, Bones, signaled decomposition in the backyard during a search in July 2008. So 2 different cadaver search dogs had followed the smell of a decomposing body, both in the backyard of the Anthony house and in the back of Casey's trunk. However, neither canine partner was able to detect decomposition during a second visit to the Anthony home, so they couldn't find anything related to the actual body. Brewer explained that this was because whatever had been in the yard was either moved or the odor had dissipated. The prosecution called Chief Medical Examiner Jan Garavaglia, who testified that she determined Caylee's manner of death to be homicide, but listed it as death by undetermined means. She stated, "We know by our observations that it's a red flag when a child has not been reported to authorities with injury, there's foul play. There is no child that should have duct tape on its face when it dies." Additionally, Garavaglia addressed the chloroform evidence found by investigators inside the trunk of Casey's car, testifying that even a small amount of chloroform would be sufficient to cause the death of a child. So Michael Warren, who was a professor at the University of Florida and a human identification laboratory director, was brought on by the prosecution to present a computer animation of the way duct tape could have been used in the death of the child, which the defense objected to hearing. Judge Perry ruled that the video could be shown to the jury. The animation featured a picture of Caylee taken alongside Casey, superimposed with an image of Caylee's decomposed skull, and another with a strip of duct tape that was recovered with her remains. The images were slowly brought together, showing that the duct tape could have covered her nose and mouth. Warren testified that it was his opinion that the duct tape found on Caylee's skull was placed there before her body began decomposing. FBI latent print examiner Elizabeth Fontaine examined 3 pieces of duct tape. FBI latent print examiner Elizabeth Fontaine examined 3 pieces of duct tape found with Caylee's remains. She tested them for fingerprints and she did not find anything, but she didn't really expect to, because with the months that the duct tape had been outside, any oil or sweat from a person's fingerprints would have long since been deteriorated. The defense then called 2 government witnesses who countered prosecution witness testimonies about the duct tape. The chief investigator for the medical examiner stated that the original placement of the duct tape was unclear and it could have shifted positions as he collected the remains. The defense called forensic pathologist Dr. Werner Spitz, who performed a second autopsy on Caylee, and challenged Garavaglia's original autopsy report. He called her autopsy shoddy, saying that it was a failure that Caylee's skull was not opened during her examination. He said, "You need to examine the whole body in an autopsy." So I guess in Garavaglia's, they didn't open her skull and examine everything. So he was not comfortable ruling the child's death a homicide. He said he could not determine what Caylee's manner of death was, but he said that there was no indication to him that she was murdered. Spitz testified that he believed the duct tape found on Caylee's skull was placed there after the body decomposed, saying that if tape was placed on the skin, there should have been DNA left on it, and that some of the crime scene photos were staged. So on June 21st, Bradley discovered that a flaw in his software misread the forensic data and that the word chloroform had been searched for only 1 time rather than 48, and the website in question offered information on the use of chloroform in the 19th century. Cindy Anthony told jurors she had been the one who performed the chloroform search on the family computer in March 2008. The prosecution said that this wasn't possible because only Casey was home at the time the search was done. And when she was asked by prosecutors how she could have made the internet searches when employment records showed that Cindy was at work, Cindy Anthony said that the records were false and that she was home because she left work early during the days that are in question. So the trial then resumed on June 27th when the judge announced that the results of the psychological evaluations showed Anthony was competent to proceed. On June 27th, the defense called 2 private investigators who in November 2008 had searched the area where the body was later found. The search was videotaped, but nothing was found. On June 28th, the defense called a Texas EquiSearch team leader who did 2 searches of the area and also found no body. The defense then called Roy Kronk, who recounted the same basic story he told the police about his discovery of Caylee Anthony's remains in December 2008. He acknowledged receiving $5,000 after the remains were identified, but denied that he told his son that finding the body would make him rich and famous. The next day, his son testified that he had, in fact, made those statements to him. On June 30th, the defense called Crystal Holloway, a volunteer in the search for Caylee, who stated that she had an affair with George Anthony, that he had been to her home and he had texted her saying, "Just thinking about you. I need you in my life." She told the defense that George Anthony had told her that Caylee's death was an accident that snowballed out of control. So in his earlier testimony, George Anthony denied the affair with Holloway, and he said he visited her only because she was ill. He said he sent the text message because he needed everyone who had helped in his life. After Holloway's testimony, Judge Perry told jurors that it could be used to impeach George Anthony's credibility, but that it was not proof of how Caylee died and or evidence of Caylee Anthony's guilt or innocence. So the prosecution rested its case on June 15th after calling 59 witnesses for 70 different testimonies. The defense rested its case on June 30th after calling 47 witnesses for 63 different testimonies. Caylee Anthony did not testify. So on June 30th and July 1st, the prosecutor presented rebuttal arguments, beginning by showing the jury photographs of Caylee's clothes and George's suicide note. It called two representatives of Cindy Anthony's former employer who explained that their computer login system shows Cindy was at work the afternoon she said she went home early and searched her computer for information about chloroform. A police computer analysis testified someone had purposely searched online for neck and breaking. Another analyst testified she did not find evidence that Cindy Anthony had searched certain terms she claimed to have searched. Anthropology professor Dr. Michael Warren from the University of Florida was recalled to rebut a defense witness on the need to open a skull during an autopsy. The lead detective stated that there were no phone calls between Cindy and George Anthony during the week of June 16, 2008. However, he told the defense he did not know that George had a second cell phone. On July 5, 2011, the jury found Caylee not guilty of counts 1 through 3 regarding first-degree murder, aggravated manslaughter of a child, and aggravated child abuse, while finding her guilty on counts 4 through 7 for providing false information to law enforcement. Count 4, Anthony said she was employed at Universal Studios during 2008, pursuant to the investigation of a missing persons report. Count 5, Anthony said she had left Caylee at an apartment complex with a babysitter, causing law enforcement to pursue the missing babysitter. Count 6, Anthony said she informed 2 employees of Universal Studios, Jeff Hopkins and Juliette Lewis at Universal, of the disappearance of Caylee. And in count 7, Anthony said she had received a phone call and spoke to Caylee on July 15th, 2008, causing law enforcement to expend further resources. In January 2013, a Florida appeals court reduced her convictions from 4 to 2 counts, and her attorney had argued that her false statements constituted a single offense. However, the appeals court noted she gave false information during 2 separate police interviews several hours apart. After the trial ended, the 12 jurors did not initially want to discuss the verdict with the media. 51-year-old Russell Hookler, an alternative juror who stepped forward the day of the verdict, said, "The prosecution didn't provide the evidence that was there for any of the charges from first-degree murder down to second-degree murder to the child abuse to even the manslaughter charge. It just wasn't there." Mark Littman, the attorney for George and Cindy Anthony, told ABC News that the family received death threats after the not guilty verdict was rendered. In response to the verdict, a statement was released by Littman on behalf of the Anthony family, George, Cindy, and Lee Anthony, saying, "While the family may never know what has happened to Caylee Marie Anthony, they now have closure for this chapter of their life. They will now begin the long process of rebuilding their lives, despite the baseless defense chosen by Caylee Anthony. The family believes that the jury made a fair decision based on the evidence presented, the testimony presented, the scientific information presented, and the rules that were given to them by the Honorable Judge Perry to guide them. The family hopes that they will be given the time by the media to reflect on this verdict and decide the best way to move forward privately." On July 6, 2011, Anthony's jailhouse letters were released to the general public. They were originally released, though not to the public, in April 2010 by prosecutors preparing for the Anthony trial. In more than 250 handwritten pages, Anthony discussed her life in jail, what she misses, and the plans for the future if freed. Since the end of the trial, various movements have arisen for the creation of a new law called Caylee's Law that would impose stricter requirements on parents to notify law enforcement of the death or disappearance of a child. And it's recently been floating around the media that apparently Caylee Anthony wants to have another child after she has been accused of murdering Caylee. So that is all that I have for this video. I do believe that there also has been some updates on this case, or just media updates, and if I can find those, I'll link any of it down below. All of my social media is linked down below. And I would appreciate if you subscribe to my channel and turn on the post notifications, and I will see you guys next time.